That join code is going to stay in the upper right-hand corner. If you have yet to join, you have a few more moments to do that. What we're going to be looking at is motivation. That's going to be a key part of this. That's going to have plenty of details about world history to go along, but our focus is on motives. We want to try and understand if so-called religious wars are really wars about religion or something else. Let's break that down into our specific objectives. First, I want us to be able to distinguish between a person's public motives and their private motives. I also want you to build your ability to detect the ulterior motives of other people. You can call that a BS detector. You can call that ability to sniff out a lie. I want you to be able to figure out why people do things, right? Including the reasons they might not want you to know about. This is going to help build your empathy skills. Now, if you were thinking, oh no, here comes more social emotional learning, well, you're kind of right. But empathy is not just about being nice. Sympathy is about being nice. That's all sympathy is about, being nice. Empathy can be about being nice, but empathy just means seeing things from someone else's perspective, which means empathy can also, and I'm not trying to turn you guys into sociopaths or encourage unethical behavior, but empathy can help you manipulate people in a situation to get that situation to work out to your advantage. It could be all kinds of things. Maybe you're going to buy a car. Empathy can help you negotiate with the seller of that car, or if you're buying it from a dealer, the salesperson at the dealership, to get the best deal. Just as one example. Knowing what makes other people tick can help you get what you want. Now, in terms of world history land, this is about understanding the reasons for so-called religious wars. Now, with all this talk about motives, you might be thinking, I don't even know what motives are, much less the three different kinds of motives. Motives are simply the reasons for a person's actions, why they do what they do. And then we do have our three different types of reasons for people's actions. Public reasons or public motives are the reasons we tell people about. The things we want people to understand as the explanation for our actions. In the second category, we have private motives. I want to be very clear about this. Private motives aren't necessarily bad. But they aren't the reasons we tell other people about. And we're going to have a hypothetical here in a few minutes to help make these a little more concrete. Our third type, though, these motives are most likely bad. And therefore, not only do we not share them with other people, we intentionally work to keep those motives or reasons secret from other people. It's important to understand all three kind of motives that might be present for a person's actions. So here's where we kind of try and bring this closer to the real world. Select from the options which of those motives you think would be my public motive for teaching. I've got a 30-second timer on that. Don't Google these. There's no website that has my different motives for teaching. right. And 18 of you went with option A. That's the correct answer, right? Not only in the sense that that is a public motive, but right, that is the reason I like teaching. I actually enjoy teaching, seeing students figure things out, right, and especially getting to watch students over all 4 years of high school, getting to see them become successful. Now, at least in second hour, some students went with option B. Just to be clear, no. And I wasn't picked on by athletic kids in high school. I wasn't what you would call a jock. I didn't have any problems with the athletic kids either. All right. Next set of options. Which of these is most likely my private motive for teaching? It'll take 30 seconds. This one a little trickier, and so some more division. Start with option C. I do sponsor that club. I do enjoy sponsoring that club. I have no idea how Dungeons and Dragons works. Any of the people who are members of that club can tell you. Right? I am just the guy that sits in a chair so that they can do what they do with supervision. But that's not anything I would try to keep secret from anybody. I mean, it's good for teachers to get to be like, not only do I do these things, but I go the extra mile and I sponsor a club. So it's not that. B potentially sounds like a likely candidate for a private motive, but this is a thing that would be ulterior. I need to keep that secret. Right? If I'm photocopying library books so that I don't have to buy them, right? One, right, all of your families who pay taxes to fund this school should be angry because I'm burning through ink and paper, printing stuff purely for myself. Second, that's illegal. So I would keep that secret. Now, 16 of you went with, I like the idea of being able to retire in my 50s with a full pension, which means I get paid every month for the rest of my life, and I get to retire in my 50s. That is nice, right? And most jobs don't let you do that. There are some trade-offs for that. Just so you know, I don't want you thinking all of a sudden that teachers are riding on a gravy train with biscuit wheels. They take 14.5% of every paycheck I get to fund that pension, and I can't get Social Security. So I only get that. But I get that, and I can get that in my 50s, and that's still a pretty good deal. And there's that. All right, now, I'm going to be very clear as we look at the options for these. What would most likely be an ulterior motive for me being a teacher if I had an ulterior motive? So take 30 seconds, try and figure out which of those is an ulterior motive. Sometimes. I have my moments. All right, let's see what we've got. Okay. All right, that's a good thing. So I would tell people about it. Because or maybe you're just thinking that's so nerdy, he should keep that to himself. That's fair. That is fair. I do write a mean college recommendation letter, and I mean mean in a good way. I do like having June and July off, but that's not anything that's bad. Right? If you ask any human being if they could have 2 months of a year to not have to go to work, something is probably not fully okay with them if they're like, no, that'd be awful. But this one, right, that would definitely be an ulterior motive. If I was doing this teaching gig so that I could identify students to deal drugs as part of my drug distribution empire, that would be very bad. I would lose my job immediately. and I'd go to prison for a really long time. But right, I would have also been like the real life Breaking Bad story, so I'd have that going for me, right? But that would be an ulterior motive. I would definitely need to keep that secret. And by the way, I'm not doing that. I would drive a much nicer car if I did that. Okay, now let's take this to the Crusades. If we're going to know people's motives, we have to know who they are and what they did first. So here are our players and what they did. We've got the Pope and the Roman Catholic Church. The Pope called on Christians to do two things. One, stop fighting each other. Stop fighting each other in Europe. You guys are kind of making a mess, running around killing people and breaking things. Stop doing that. That was called the peace of God. Right? He declared a peace of God in Christian Europe. But he didn't say, you can't fight anywhere. He's like, just take it outside. Matter of fact, take it outside of Europe, right, and fight somebody else. Fight the Muslims, and this will be a holy war. Okay, so peace of God among Christians, a holy war between Christians and Muslims. Those were the actions of the Pope. And then we have the combatants, or if you're of a more British persuasion, combatants. Combatants are people who fight in combat. Some of these we would expect. Knights definitely fight. Nobles lead armies, so they fight. And then peasants. There were actually peasants who went to fight. You learned a bit about this in the Ed puzzle. It didn't go very well for them. But again, they are combatants because they do the actual fighting in combat. And then our third group are the merchants. These are traders, people who buy things at a lower price and sell them at a higher price to make money. And most of these during the Crusades are Italian. Now, specifically what they're doing as traders here, supplying the Crusaders with the things they're going to need in the Holy Land. Right, supplies, weapons, maybe horses. They're also going to sell the service of transportation to the Holy Land, because they can take you there by ship, and that is most of the time in this era faster and safer than going over land. So those are our three categories of players and their actions. Now let's look at their motives. And we'll do this the same way we did, talking about me. Public motives for the Crusades. So for the church and the Pope, this is advertised as saving the Holy Land as a sacred Christian place. It's also about protecting the Byzantine Empire, which is a Christian empire that is being attacked from different directions by Muslim groups, and it's losing territories. It's in danger. So this is about going to protect fellow Christians in what was the Eastern Roman Empire. Motives for the combatants are a little harder to get. I mean, these are thinking about the next category. These are very straightforward. Combatants' public motives, This is about doing their Christian duty. Especially the knights and the nobles who went on crusade went through this very long, elaborate, formal ceremonies, pledging to participate. It was also about obeying the church. Remember, the church at this time claims to have authority over all Christian lands. So if the church tells you to do something, you were supposed to go do it. For the merchants, you might be thinking, well, they're just in it for the money. What are they going to tell people? Well, what they're going to tell people is that they are providing valuable things. They're making sure the combatants have what they need when they get to the Holy Land to fight. And they're going to help make sure the Crusaders can get there. And so they're saying, look, we're not doing the fighting, and yes, we're making money, but you need us, right? And we do things that nobody else can do as well as we can do them. So this is what the three groups are going to advertise as their motives. Privately, and remember, private motives are not necessarily bad. I mean, if popes are trying to get the knights and the nobles to stop fighting each other and wrecking things in Europe, they're not going to tell them to do that. It's kind of like teachers correcting student behavior. We're supposed to redirect you. We're not just supposed to tell you stop doing that. We're supposed to instead just suggest that you do this other thing, right, which will get you to stop doing what we don't want you to do. And Pope's doing the same thing. Like, hey, guys, go fight over there. And if you're fighting over there, you're not fighting here, messing up Europe. Another part of the private motive might be reuniting the Christian church. Remember, we've had the Great Schism. We now have the Roman Catholic Church in the West and the Orthodox Church in the East. The Pope might be hoping that this crusade will be the thing that will reunite the church. For combatants, this is a little harder to know. It's not that combatants never wrote anything down, especially for the nobles. A lot of them were literate and could write and did leave things like exactly diaries, but messages behind. But in a lot of these cases, again, they're private motives. Adventure seeking is probably one of the things that the Crusaders, especially the younger ones, had in mind. Or seeking the glory of being a hero in battle. We can't know for sure, but those have been, throughout history, pretty common motives for men, especially young men, to go participate in wars. And still today, reasons that young men sign up for military service. It could also be females. It's not just about that. But historically, it's been males, and males are still more likely to volunteer for military service. For the merchants, what are those private motives? They want to use this opportunity to go establish trade connections with the Holy Land. There's good stuff there. Some of the richest places in the world are either in the Holy Land or trade through the Holy Land, like Egypt. Today, you might not think of Egypt as a rich country. It's not. But back in this time period, Egypt was a fantastically wealthy place. And so the merchants would like to build trade with the Holy Land to kind of get in on that action. Not necessarily bad, right? But motives that each type of player is more likely to keep to themselves. And that leaves us with ulterior motives. For church leaders and the Pope, this is reuniting the Christian church. Wasn't that on the previous slide? It was, but right here's the twist. They're not reuniting the Christian church, hoping to let the Orthodox people run the show. Right? The Pope wants to reunite the whole church and then be in charge of it. For combatants, if you are telling everyone that you're doing this as part of your Christian duty and obey the church, you probably don't want them to know that you're also hoping to get some land and some riches out of the deal. But this was a common motive. Now, one of them that has been typically made to be a big deal in textbooks and earlier history books is that little brother knights who were not going to inherit land flocked to the Crusades to fight so that they could go conquer some land for themselves. This sometimes was the case, but was not something that was really all that common. But it was there for at least some of the knights. We know that this was a motive for some of the nobles because they often fought each other. So we have Christian nobles fighting each other over territory in the Holy Land. So if we have Christians fighting Christians over land instead of fighting Muslims, suggests that there is that land motive involved. To make matters clearer, we have examples of Muslim leaders and Christian leaders forming military alliances to help each other attack their own Muslim enemies or their own Christian enemies. So we have Muslims helping some Christian nobles defeat Christian crusaders in some part of the Holy Land. And then we have Muslim leaders, they were going through their own stuff, civil wars, intrigue. This is the era where we first hear the term assassins, because these Muslim leaders are often sending these assassins to kill other leaders. And so Christians would sometimes help some of the Muslim leaders defeat their own Muslim enemies. It sounds complicated and messy because it was complicated and messy. All right, for the peasants, remember, peasants aren't a huge part of the combat story. They did not do well when they tried to fight against armed Muslims. They were just slaughtered, but some of them did try to participate, and they had some pretty good reasons. But you don't want to tell this to nobles, because they might not let you go, or might try to stop you at least. This is about escaping manners. How is your Lord supposed to tell you you can't leave when the Pope has called on all Christians to go and fight in a holy war? And so this is your ticket out. Right? And you can get away from that awful manor life of oppression with people telling you what to do all the time, making you work on their lands, forbidding you to marry without permission, all of that stuff. And even aside from the oppression, it's not a pleasant life on the manors. And we know this. And we've talked about this. Your animals sleep with you because you need their body heat to help keep your hut warm. You sleep on a bug-infested mat of straw. But also, and more generally, things aren't all that great outside of your hut. Europe, for a lot of this time, is a pretty cold, damp, dreary place. If you get lung infections, that's not a good kind of weather to get over those ailments. The Holy Land, on the other hand, is sunny and it's dry. For a lot of people, it's a healthier place to be. People still move from wet, damp climates to sunny, warm climates to improve their health. One of the most famous people to do that was Teddy Roosevelt, who before he was president left cold, damp New York State and went out west where it was warmer and especially drier and was able to get over a lung illness. And then we have the merchants. And what they really, really don't want people thinking about or being aware of, if they can help it, is that they are making money by dealing not only with Christians, but also profiting by dealing with Muslims. How this works: they make money on the trip to the Holy Land by selling Crusaders' equipment and transportation services, which is nice. There's money in that. The problem is, if you go over there with a full ship that made you money and you return with an empty ship, you're not making any money on that return trip. So the merchants need to figure out how to make money on the way home. So they make that money by trading with Muslims. The people they're supposed to be helping the Crusaders fight are also their business partners. Not only are they making money trading with Muslims, they're specifically making money by selling things that the Muslims produce, like spices. I know you don't think of spices as some kind of kind of thing, but spices were very rare at this time and incredibly expensive. Matter of fact, if you go to a grocery store and walk down the spice aisle, you'll find out a lot of spices are still very expensive. They're just not as precious as they were back then. So they would buy things from Muslim traders, and then they would take them back to the Christians and make money off of the Christians selling these spices at a profit. So merchants are definitely playing both sides in this thing, and they would prefer that you not think about that. And that's where we will stop with the notes. I'm sure you've got this. If anybody needs me to go back to a different slide, now is the time. Before our exit slip. Which one? Oh, yes, you may. Why?